We rarely saw Rudolf in the factory. He was more of a bureaucrat. He worked from home. Adolf Dassler was the expert. There was the Puma butcher and the Adidas butcher. There was no end to the feud. It was like East and West Berlin. It was so widespread that in an inn or a restaurant, when Adidas people sat at one table, no Puma people would sit down. This rivalry was obvious at each match. That's what made these local games so explosive. But we lost the game and it turned into a national scandal. Mr. Dassler was very smart, very ambitious, a very driven man. Adi Dassler always said, "Bring me the fastest runner, man or woman." That's the most important for the Olympic Games. The rivalry was a Dassler family trait.
I'm Adolf Dassler, and for as long as I can remember, I've always dreamt of making sports shoes for the world's best athletes. In my workshop, I focus on the product. I want to create the perfect shoe, the one that will be an advantage to the runner thanks to its softer leather. So, I experiment, I try on my own creations. Rudy, I know you sometimes have trouble understanding that one quality product is all it takes to spark sales.
No, Adolf. You're obsessed with the shoe, down to the tiniest details. You're the baby of the family. You want to gain our father's favor. Like him, you are specially talented in your field. I will give you that. But that doesn't mean that you alone are responsible for our company winning its first gold medal. Let me remind you that Lena Radka, not you, won the 800-meter race at the Olympics in Amsterdam. But I, Rudolf Dastler, am the one who approaches people and sells our shoes. If I don't do this, as light as our shoes might be, they won't leave the shelves.
We sell more shoes with each passing Olympiad, and the Berlin Games are looking very promising. Personally, I have no interest in politics. Yes, in 1935, like most residents of Herzogenaurach, I registered with the Nazi Party in power since '33. But the only politics I care about is sports.
I agree with you, Adolf. Politics are more and more present in our daily lives and affairs, a sign of the times. I'm a registered party member, and I train the Hitler Youth of Herzogenaurach. I need to be around the influential people. It's all about sales, more sales. In our field, everything needs to be invented. I'm very proud that most of the German athletes in the Berlin Olympics will be wearing our shoes. We need more athletes, and if possible, the best ones. Who cares who they are or where they're from?
Als eröffnet.
My target is the fastest, most majestic man in the world, Jesse Owens. He's a black American, and when he's not training, he works in a shoe factory. I see that as a sign. He just won 2 gold medals in the 100 meters and the long jump. I managed to give him 3 pairs of shoes specially designed for him. I'll take the risk of straying from the party line. He's the athlete I wish I could be. Jesse Owens is trained for the 200 meters. He's wearing Dasslers, special spikes that claw at the cinder track, so lightweight that he can fly. And that's what he's done. He flew and he won.
It was a very courageous move that showed how devoted the two brothers were to their profession, how essential it was to produce shoes that helped athletes improve their performance. This desire was deeply rooted within them. It was very important.
I've been drafted. I'm 40. My brother will take care of my wife, my son Horst, and my youngest Inga. The idea of leaving my workshop is killing me. Who will keep designing sports shoes? Can Rudy take over?
Of course I could, but our factory has just been requisitioned. We now have to manufacture belts, backpacks, and parts for tanks. We're short on workers. I tried to call in some favors so we might be spared, but it was no use. Just like everyone else, we have to participate in the war effort.
I was only drafted for 3 months. It was decided that I, Adolf Dassler, was essential to the smooth functioning of the Dassler Brothers company. What proof of how crucial my role is.
I have been drafted and am being sent to Poland. How unfair. Why aren't I essential to the running of the company, like Adolf is? I've been assigned to an office in the Ministry of Finances. Since when are the older brothers sent away and the younger ones kept at home? My connections are useless. I'll never get out of this hole. I'm 45.
Rudy, here's what you wrote me from Poland. Dear Adolf, I will not hesitate to ask for the factory to be closed. Like that, you'll be forced to choose a job that will allow you to be the boss and carry a weapon because you're such a great athlete. Do you have so little faith in me, Rudy, that you could write this? Last night, hundreds of planes flew over our heads. This morning, we learned that Nuremberg had been bombed.
"1945, the Russians are approaching. There's no way we are falling into the hands of those brutes. I am escaping. I am deserting. Destination, Herzogenaurach. I'm cold, but who cares? I want to get back to my wife and my 2 sons, Armin and Gerd. My feet are frostbitten, but it doesn't matter. I want to return to my home, to what belongs to me." I had barely made it back home when the Americans arrested me. They'd been tipped off. I was held prisoner in the Hammelburg camp. Adolf, in every letter, I repeat my identification number, 2597. Please get me out of this camp. My place is in our factory. I know you're behind this. You want to run the business alone. No, you can't have done this. It's your wife, Kata. She must have reported me. I'm going crazy.
The war is over. Gebrüder Dassler is back in business, making shoes.
My name is Georg Hetzler. In 1946, I was hired by Gebrüder Dassler as a leather-cutting apprentice. This was the job I had always dreamt of. Right away, I felt at home in the company. Rudolf was there, and so was Adolf. But we rarely saw Rudolf in the factory. He was more of a bureaucrat. He worked from home. Adolf Dassler was the expert, that's for sure. He ran the company. He was in charge of technical manufacturing. Adolf was really the one to handle anything in that area. Rudolf stopped by from time to time. He would say hello, and then he would leave.
Rudolf's temper has gotten worse ever since his return from Hammelburg. The house we've shared for the past 10 years has become a living hell. The walls shake from his bouts of anger. Our two families fight on a daily basis now. I would be able to deal with this situation if I didn't have the denazification committee on my back. I've been accused of being a Bela-Städter. According to the committee, I actively participated in the Nazi regime and profited from it. I have to defend myself, or my business will be taken away from me. Rudy, I hope you're not behind this.
I, Rudolf, denounced my brother to the denazification committee. I had no qualms about doing this. I have gotten my revenge.
Grundsätzlich wurde das jedem unterstellt, der eine hervorgehobene
It was always assumed that anyone who held an important position, like factory manager for instance, could be a suspect. It was proven that during World War II, Adolf Dassler assisted certain people and families without regard for their political opinions, despite the risk involved. These facts, combined with statements made by witnesses at the time, accelerated the denazification process.
Adolf, I don't trust you anymore. Too many hurtful words, too much betrayal. We have reached the point of no return.
Our personalities are incompatible. It's like in marriage. Separate before it's too late. It's early 1948, and the Dassler Brothers Company is no more.
They assembled the employees. That's when the boss told us. He immediately said that we were free to decide who we wanted to continue working with, if we wanted to stay or go. These people chose to follow Rudolf. These 13 people helped Rudolf start his company. Those weren't easy times. We had to carry sacks of cement and do masonry work. Yes, now we were the masons. Then we started working on a very simple, lightweight shoe. On the front and the back of the shoe, we put horizontal stripes. But it didn't win over many athletes. So we thought about it for a while and came up with the idea of using vulcanized rubber soles. And bingo, it worked. They sold like hotcakes. The boss was thrilled.
I'm throwing myself into the fight. 13 employees have followed me to this factory acquired in 1939. It's up to me to prove I can be as inventive as Adolf. I moved across the Aarach, the big brother and the little brother, face to face. Let the battle begin.
I'm keeping the factory and the villa. Our family split in two. Our mother, Paulina, and our older brother, Fritz, went over to Rudolf's side. My sister, Marie, stayed with me. Now I run my own ship, and I hope to take my crew far. But my ship doesn't have a name yet. I'm still looking. If I take the first two letters of my first and last name, I get Ada. I can't use that. It's the name of a children's shoe brand. The name has to reflect me, my identity, and my vision. Adler, no. Adila, that doesn't work either. Adidas. Yes, that's it.
Ruda? Everyone thinks it's silly. They're not wrong. Who would want to wear shoes with such a name? What about Puma? That was my nickname when I was little. It's catchy. Every athlete wants to be a Puma, unlike Adidas.
When we were little, we had no contact with the other side of the family. The entire town of Herzogenaurach was divided. There was the Puma butcher and the Adidas butcher. People didn't look at each other. They didn't speak. So during my childhood, that other family basically didn't exist. Adolf Dassler's grandchildren were the same age as us. They went to school 5 miles from here. My friends and I went to school in a Puma bus, and the others went in an Adidas bus. When the buses passed each other, they would race to the finish, even if this meant making some dangerous moves. The Urach separated Puma on the right bank from Adidas on the left bank. In the middle of town, there was a magnificent billboard indicating directions to the right and to the left banks. There was no end to the feud. It was like East and West Berlin. It was so widespread that in an inn or a restaurant, when Adidas people sat at one table, no Puma people would sit down. And if Puma workers were at a table, Adidas employees couldn't sit there.
Puma is doing well. I'm working hard. Everything I earn is invested in machinery. I have several tricks up my sleeve. Sepp Herberger is one of them. Sepp is training the German football team for the next World Cup taking place in Switzerland. It's a big deal because it's the first time Germany has taken part in this competition since the war. But Sepp is getting greedy. He's asked me to pay 1,000 marks per month in exchange for his players wearing my brand. Who does he think he is?
During a meeting one evening, here's what the boss told us. I think I may have made a mistake. I sent Sepp Herberger away. He was too arrogant. And Sepp went straight to the other brother, Adi, who welcomed him with open arms. Our boss made a huge mistake. In the 50s, receiving money in exchange for collaborating on the development of the shoe was exceptional. Was this the first case? I can't say. I don't know. But it was definitely one of the first cases in the world of sports.
Unlike you, Rudy, I don't mind paying. But what I care about the most is being around athletes, having them try on my shoes, listening to their comments, and improving my products thanks to this contact. The World Cup has begun. Germany's not a favorite, but I have given them something revolutionary: screw-in studs. Perfect for avoiding slipping on a hot and humid field. There'll be lots of rain over Bern on the day of the final. Thanks to my studs, Germany will be ready to face the favored Hungarian team.
Only 6 minutes of playing time left. Schäfer passes to Rahn. He scores the winning goal with his left foot. Germany 3, Hungary 2.
Überglücklich fallen sich die Spieler in die Arme. Aus der Hand von Jules Rimet erhält Fritz Walter die goldene Trophäe.
This victory will allow us to write a new chapter in the history of our brand new Federal Republic of Germany. And Adidas has contributed to this newfound pride. Screw-in studs. A miracle has occurred, and the Adidas revolution is underway.
Adolf is giving a great performance. He loves the spotlight. Adolf copies, he spies. I, Rudolf, invented the screw-in studs. That is a Puma innovation.
Puma gathered proof, and Adidas did the same. But if you really look into the history of screw-in studs, you'll find that they had already been tested as early as 1900 in England. They had been tried out and didn't spread to Germany until much later because of injuries. Both brothers are responsible for introducing these studs to us. They both deserve the credit. The sports world was thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
I also have my moment of glory. 100 and 200 meter European champion Heinz Fütterer is German and he wears Puma. That title is just as important to our country as the World Cup. Besides, when it comes to football, Adolf hasn't heard the last of me. In Herzogenaurach, my team is much better than his.
It was a symbolic war. The feuding bosses, Adolf and Rudolf Dasslер, looked for ways to develop their businesses, even in their hometown. Puma became official supplier for FC Herzogenaurach, and Adidas invested in the other team, the ASV. The existing rivalry continued to grow through these football teams. You could feel it at every game. That's what made these local games so explosive. This was different from other matches, where no one knew the opponent. Imagine this. Before and after each game, there were loads of articles in the papers. Various locals, including the mayor, were called upon to give their predictions. And afterwards, reporters wanted to know, were you satisfied with the results? Was it a good game? So before and after, the derby was the big topic of conversation.
The Melbourne games were my son Horst's baptism by fire. Like me, he likes to win and to be the best. The only instructions I gave him were to make sure that every future Olympic winner wore Adidas. We needed to be seen by whatever means possible.
At 27, my eldest son Armin has entered the ring. For the first time, he will represent Puma at the Olympics. My wife Friedel thinks I'm too hard on him, but I want to make him a worthy successor. I advised him to look out for Adidas spies, and I told him to make sure that his hotel room wasn't tapped.
Horst is truly the prodigal son. Everything he's done in Melbourne has worked out wonderfully. First, he set up shop in town and gave out free product to all the athletes. But that's not all. Along with our sales team, he walks all around the Olympic Village and continues giving out product to all the best athletes. And in a stroke of genius, Horst managed to block the Puma shipment at customs on the docks. One step ahead for Adidas, one step back for the others. 62 Olympic medal winners were wearing our shoes. We're victims of our own success. Our factory can't satisfy the increase in demand. We'll open an affiliate in France, in Detwiller. Naturally, Horst will run this company.
They chose Alsace because it wasn't too far from Germany. But also, there they found small, declining businesses that they could take over. So I think that's how it happened. At the time, French labor was cheap. It was the Taiwan of the day. Adidas Germany was so successful that they couldn't manufacture enough shoes. Horst Dassler had two objectives: to supply Germany with shoes and to develop the French market. That was in 1959. Mr. Dassler, as you probably know, was very smart, very ambitious, very driven. He wanted to move forward quickly, and he went way beyond these two goals. I didn't take one single breath during the whole 100 meters. You don't have time to breathe. It flies by. 10 seconds and it's over. The only goal is the finish line. getting to the finish line as quickly as possible.
Now I have my revenge on Adolf. At the Games in Rome, the winner of the main event, the 100-meter Olympic champion, ran in Puma. The medal ceremony marks the end of this extraordinary day. But what is he wearing on his feet?
I stepped onto the podium with these very light shoes, these Adidas, that had just come out. I couldn't wear my track shoes onto the podium, so I had changed shoes. And I put on these Adidas. I didn't even think about it. But the media certainly wrote all about it. Someone even came up with the story that I had run with an Adidas on the right foot and a Puma on the left. It was totally absurd.
Absurd alles war. Ja.
Some people claimed that one had paid me more than the other, but no one paid anything.
Bis zur Olympiade, es war noch, glaube ich,
Up until the Olympics in Rome in 1960,
war es nicht üblich, dass Sportler
it was unusual for athletes to receive money for wearing a particular brand of shoe.
Marke zu tragen. Das hat 1960 mit
It really began in 1960, with Armin Harry receiving money from both Adidas and Puma.
Der Armin Harry seinerzeit sowohl von Adidas als auch von Puma Geld bekommen hat.
At one point, I felt like a puppet, like I had been taken advantage of, like both companies were using me to make a profit. I can tolerate many things except injustice. If they had told me up front, I would have done things differently.
Adidas has broken its deal with Armin Harry. If he prefers the other bank of the Orac, he can stay there. Puma's claws have scratched me for the first time, but I'm ready to fight back. I have the strength and the means.
My second son, Gert, launched Puma France in Alsace. He took over an old shoe factory with its employees in Sufflenheim. I can't leave the French market to Adolf and Horst. We have to block them.
Vous saviez que l'on disait chez nous?
Do you know what we used to say about this competition? Nix NG. Nix geort. Never heard of it. At the trade shows in Munich, Frankfurt, and especially Paris, it was all about who had the biggest stand. The two companies were always competing with each other. Who was the better host? There were some incredible bottles of champagne, etc. And our rival did the same thing.
Something is changing in the world of sports. I just spent 10,000 marks on a contract with football star Eusebio, the Portuguese player. We have a model named after him, which is flying out of the stores. Before, people bought shoes for the brand. Now it's the athlete's name that sells. I have to adopt to this change, or Adolf will do it first.
Adidas is 20 years old. Puma, too. I know that our businesses are organized around the same model. Our wives, our children, and even their spouses hold important positions. They participate in the war we wage against each other. This is necessary because the coming years are going to be tough.
And violent, Adolf. Armin, my eldest son, landed in Mexico for the Olympics just a few days after a student protest ended in a bloodbath. For the time being, politics stay out of the stadiums. But here's what worries me most about these games. The war against Adolf, the little cobbler, has become all about money. I give Armin lots of money so he can negotiate wearing our shoes. Obviously, we have to be discreet. The Olympics are still for amateur athletes only.
Adi Dassler hat immer gesagt,
Adi Dassler always said, "Bring me the fastest runner, man or woman."
das ist das Wichtigste bei der
They were the most important athletes in the Olympic Games.
waren uns nicht so wichtig.
The other disciplines didn't matter as much.
100 Meter und 200 Meter ist das meiste Geld bezahlt worden.
So the majority of the money went to the 100 meters and the 200 meters. In comparison with today, this money was in marks, not in euros. For the 100 meters, the champion would receive 20,000 marks. A marathon or 10,000-meter runner would get 5,000 marks. In 1968, the war between Adidas and Puma was in full swing. I was a small celebrity in England, and I ran with Adidas. But I had a fight with the English Adidas representative, and a friend of mine told me he could get me Pumas. I said, okay. They gave me £100. It doesn't sound like much, but at the time it was worth 10 times more. I had just gotten married, I needed to buy things, and £100 was a decent amount. It was illegal, of course. But they gave me the money, and I ran with Puma. And then what happened? I got to Mexico, and we were supposed to receive lots of Puma shoes. But there weren't any. And why not? Because Horst Dassler had managed to block the Puma shipment at the docks. He told customs agents that the brand didn't have permission to import, which was true according to the country's regulations. Adidas could import because Dassler and Sons, who always looked ahead, had purchased a small Mexican company a few months back. It was called Adidas Canada. As a local business, it could import Adidas shoes. But Puma hadn't thought of this, so all their shoes ended up blocked in customs. We had sombreros and T-shirts, but we ran practically barefoot. In the end, Adidas decided not to take it out on the athletes. They let through 100 or 300 pairs of shoes, and each Puma athlete received one pair for the games.
The idea was not to put pressure on the athletes. Of course not. The pressure was meant for Puma, more than ever. My dear big brother spends $10 for each pair of shoes on Mexican soil. That should limit his competitive spirit and make Adidas the most visible brand. For the first time, these games will be broadcast on Mondo Vision. But for now, the whole world can't stop talking about Carlos and Smith. These black American athletes equipped by Puma have given these games a political undertone. I wonder what Rudolf thinks about this.
At first, one might think that this was good publicity, because the Puma design was very present on the podium. It's unusual for only one shoe to be so clearly highlighted. In Germany, it was a good publicity stunt, but not in the United States, because the Black Panther movement wasn't exactly on good terms with the government, if you know what I mean. So this whole story didn't offer any advantage for the American market and resulted in Puma being associated with Black Power.
Those games have cost us a fortune, but 85% of the Olympic winners are wearing Adidas. Will we always be able to pay athletes to wear our shoes? As long as the Puma is on the prowl, we have no choice. But I'm not worried. Our 9 European factories produce thousands of shoes each day.
Financially, we bend, but we don't break, even if it hurts to admit that Adidas is in the lead. Our 5 European factories haven't changed things. We must be more aggressive in our sales techniques.
My son Horst is living the high life in Alsace. Politicians, athletes, and presidents of sports federations all attended the opening of the new Adidas site in Landesheim. Horst even bought an inn across from the factory to house all these guests. He's forging his independence on Adidas money and then comes asking for help. He's insatiable. His mother says he takes after me. Horst has moved into clothing, ignoring the very reason that I created Adidas. Shoes, not clothes. Why isn't he like his sisters? Thank goodness they're content to work by my side and listen to me.
Horst Dassler was very successful in France. We were a little envious, if I may say so.
wenn ich das so sagen darf,
We were jealous of his success in France.
auf die Erfolge, die gehabt
We felt that he didn't deserve such success.
Es gab
There were some years where the competition between Adidas Germany and Adidas France was even stronger than between Adidas Germany and Puma.
Deutschland und Puma.
For the World Cup in Mexico, Adidas has once again broken new ground. We're supplying the official ball, the Telstar. We'll be seen at every single game. But one man is attracting more attention than the ball. His name is Pelé. He's too expensive for Adidas, and obviously for Puma too. I doubt Rudy will try anything.
Bringing Pelé onto the Puma team would be very dangerous, financially speaking. I know that King Pelé, as people refer to him today, wants to attract our attention.
I didn't know that Pelé was also such a talented actor, and on Mondo Vision, no less.
Adolf, it was Armin, my very own son, who made a deal behind my back. Pelé is costing me $25,000 just for the World Cup, and $100,000 for the next 4 years. It's crazy. Armin wants me dead and ruined. I'll never let him take over my business.
My father just couldn't resist trying to cut a deal with Pelé. My grandfather almost fainted. He was furious. He screamed, $100,000 for a football player? What's wrong with you? Clearly, they didn't share the same view of their business.
Our family looks harmonious in this picture. But my sons Armin and Gert are sometimes out of control, and this worries me. They are more rivals than partners. Unfortunately, the Orach only has 2 banks. Gert has been in France for 6 years and has accumulated lots of debt. I feel terrible for him. He has lost the Alsatian battle against Adidas.
He had invested a lot of money in leathers from South America and was overdrawn at the bank. But he wasn't allowed to see his plan through to the end. One day, Puma Germany's top executives showed up in lots of Mercedes. Armin's Opel Senator was there too. They all went up to the first floor and called in all the personnel. They announced Gert's immediate departure. All back to Germany. And that was that.
Ich weiß natürlich, dass die Brüder immer wiederum in diesem Konkurrenzkampf waren und jeder wollte.
I know the brothers competed with each other. Each one wanted to prove to his father that he was better. But like you say, the sibling rivalry between old Adi and Rudolf had been transmitted to Rudolf's children. It was a Dassler family trait.
Weiter fortgepflanzt. Das war so ein Credo der Dasslers.
We found the way to thwart Puma's progress and to acquire new sources of revenue. The idea is simple. Turn each sport federation president into an ally. My son Horst is putting this into practice to perfection. He's becoming a man of influence.
The new president of FIFA is Mr. de Havilland.
Frankfurt, 1974. Horst Dassler played his part perfectly during this election. You know John Bulter. At the time, the FIFA president was English, and Havilland was campaigning against him. I clearly remember a meeting between Dassler, John, and myself. Horst asked John to take care of incumbent President Stanley Rouse. Rouse? Horst knew that I knew Havilland well, so he asked me to work on him and do everything possible to get people to vote for him. But we couldn't be seen to openly support a particular candidate. That would have been a terrible mistake. It was clear to Horst Dassler that we had to beat Puma. In reality, Puma didn't have the structure to oppose us, so we were everywhere, at every possible meeting around the world. For example, in '76, I traveled a total of 400,000 kilometers. We would go anywhere to meet a federation president, an Olympic Committee president, or a minister. When we signed a contract with the Soviet Union, it automatically included all the other countries: Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and even East Germany, which was 100% Adidas. We got it automatically. It was a question of mutual trust. When I went to Moscow, for instance, a black limousine would be waiting for me when I stepped off the plane. No checkpoints, no customs. Not only did we deliver the goods, we paid. For example, we paid East Germany, or more specifically, the East German Athletic Confederation. It all depended on the size of the bonus, whether or not there was one. But on the average, we paid 500,000 to 1 million in cash.
Money, money, it's always about money. The players want their piece of the pie. They're not interested in the shoes, only what's in it for them. During every World Cup since 1954, I've stood by the German team. I've spent my time looking for the best leather and designs for them. And now they're threatening to hide the 3 stripes with shoe polish if I don't give them more money. We'll pay this last time, but that's it. I'm quitting the national team. They won't be seeing me anymore. I'm discouraged and sad.
Compared to Adidas, I don't have the financial capability to take on a football team. So I target the guy who plays centre forward, the one with personality that grabs everyone's attention. This year, Dutch star Johan Cruyff is our Puma. I love him, particularly since, unlike the rest of his team, he refuses to wear the 3-striped jersey. Adidas has been forced to make him a jersey with 2 stripes. Once again, the Puma's claws has scratched the 3-leaf clover.
Here's a replica of Johan Cruyff's jersey with the number 14. It's a gorgeous jersey. And you can see that there are 2 stripes instead of 3. This huge event will remain unique in the history of football and of sports in general.
Everyone is here with me. My sons Armin and Gert, my wife Friedel, and others too. But Adolf is missing. I can feel the priest whispering in my ear that my brother accepts my apology. Did I understand correctly? Time is slipping through my fingers. They are all here for the Puma, except Adolf, who I miss.
I didn't attend my brother's funeral. My daughter Birgit represented us. I know that Armin and Gert fought it out in court to gain control of Puma. Armin won. Now he's our competitor.
Als Rudolf Dasslер 1974 gestorben ist, hat
When Rudolf Dasslер died in 1974, his eldest son, Armin, took over. At the time, Puma's turnover was 500 million marks. Armin Dasslер referred to himself as the new Puma. He said he would double the turnover in 2 to 3 years. He relied on sports marketing to achieve this goal.
auf diesen Weg zu kommen.
This tactic worked initially, but the brand went the way of mass manufacturing, which ultimately led to its demise. We produced shoes for less than 20 euros, and we ended up at the bottom of the barrel. We no longer produced quality. This wasn't a smart strategy on Armin's part. But he saw that Adidas was so far ahead of us. He said, Adidas's turnover is 1 billion more than ours. We have to catch up.
Without saying a word to me, Horst has just started a company, ISL, who will sell the World Cup to big brands and television networks. He must feel invincible now that the sporting world is at his feet. It's all about money once again, and power. The power to replace my shoes made in Germany by his shoes made in France. As far as I'm concerned, this amounts to a declaration of war right in the middle of the World Cup in Argentina. To me, this is worse than the launch of his Arena swimsuit brand. Horst is going too quickly, aiming too high, pushing too hard. Like the French team, who's demanding more money. Why don't they understand that only the shoe matters to me?
At the time, the shoes were black with white stripes. Then they asked us to paint the stripes before each game so everyone could clearly see Adidas on television. As soon as a player was selected for the French team, he was given 300 francs to paint the white stripes. According to the older team members, they had been giving us 300 francs for quite some time. 300 francs wasn't a lot of money, but that was the deal. When we qualified for the World Cup, the elders asked if we would get a raise. I kept my mouth shut because I was young. For 2 years, François Remeter, who represented Adidas, led us to believe that we would get a raise for the World Cup. So we waited and waited, and just before the competition began, he showed up saying, "You got your raise, 302 francs, that's a 2-franc raise." They'd taken us for fools. So we didn't paint our shoes, we covered them in polish. We didn't start a huge protest, we simply didn't paint our stripes. But unfortunately, that day we lost the game, and the story turned into a national scandal.
It's September the 5th, 1978, and it's very hot in my dear hometown of Herzogenaurach. Adidas is doing well. It's the most worn brand in the world. We built a magnificent hotel where I welcome athletes and politicians. We've done more than the competition. I can't imagine where danger could be lurking now that Puma's so far behind us. I'm 78, and I feel like I have a few years of work left in me yet.
Adolf and Rudolf Dasslер are buried in Herzogenaurach on opposite sides of the cemetery. They are separated in death as they were in life. Upon his father's death, Horst returned to Germany to run Adidas with his mother and sisters. But the business began losing ground in the face of new competition. The American Nike and the British Reebok, who both manufactured cheaply in Asia. Horst died in 1987 at the age of 51. 3 years later, Adolf Dassler's daughters sold their shares to Frenchman Bernard Tapie, who, unable to turn the company around, sold the business to another Frenchman, Robert Louis Dreyfus. Adidas went public and started its comeback. Today, the brand is number 2 worldwide, just behind Nike. Puma is in 3rd position, far behind its rivals. Like Adidas, Puma was helpless in the face of the Anglo-Saxon invasion. In 1989, Armin and Gert lost control of Puma. 2 years later, Armin died at the age of 61. Puma changed hands several times before being purchased by Frenchman François Pinault and the Kering Group. Gert is the only survivor. He claims he is finally at peace. One Dassler family member is still an active Adidas executive. Frank Dassler is Rudolf's grandson and Adidas general counsel. In 2009, on Peace Day, Adidas and Puma employees fought it out for the first time on the football field. It was a friendly game that they nicknamed the Peace One Day Cup.